This program are not those of the owners, advertisers, and management company of Sugar City FM 90.3, nor are such statements necessarily supported or endorsed by the owners, managers, or advertisers of the station. While we encourage all to share their opinions, we do not support any comments that may slander, discriminate, or otherwise offend anyone, and we insist that you refrain from any such statements.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Nearest Natal on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Nearest Natal every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Nearest Natal tackles the issues and take your call. Fear No Favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Good evening and welcome to Fear Nor Favor. Tonight we are going to be looking at a few issues that are social topics. And I hope that if you care to have an input, you can call 466-0903 or you can message me on WhatsApp 665-4508. Well, let us start with Parliament. We had a bill that got its 3 readings. The bill was entitled Navy Silent Administration Civil Procedure Bill, if my memory serves me correctly. Now, basically what happened was there was a sort of nebulous or gray area whether or not the Nevis Island Administration could sue a party, a person, a company, or be sued by individuals and groups of individuals and companies. And that seemed to have been a gray area. And I think that Parliament, the mover of the bill, the Honorable Garth Wilkin, I think the whole effort was to put some clarity to that situation, because the matter occurred several months ago and the Chief Justice indicated in her write-up that the Nevis Island administration, based on what she knew about the Constitution and our legislation, that it had no footing to sue or be sued, and that needed clarity. So the bill was actually to clear up that. Now the issue is, what I would have liked to witness was an explanation as to what would happen with liability thereafter, compensation liability. Let us suppose that the Nevis Island administration was sued. Civil action was taken against the Nevis Island administration. And there was a substantial compensation to be paid. Who would be liable to ensure that this compensation was paid on behalf of the Nevis Island administration? Somebody might claim that that is straightforward. It's all the Nevis Island administration could be the party that would be liable for the compensation. But sometimes lawsuits do call some real exorbitant figures for compensation. And the question is, who would be responsible? And even if the Nevis Island administration couldn't handle the liability in its totality, could the federal government be called upon as guarantor for the effort to financially meet the obligation of the liability? Those are questions I would have liked to hear discussed, are issues I would have liked to hear discussed today, but we never did get there. Is it possible to have a hybrid situation? Let us suppose that persons working within the Nevis Island administration who simultaneously carry out work on behalf of the federal government in that capacity. If something happened, could there be a hybrid situation where the person can choose to sue the Nevis Island administration or the federal government? Is there any situation where that could actually come up? Those are things I would have liked to hear discussed today. But we didn't get an opportunity to hear that, or maybe I did not hear it. Maybe other persons may have heard it. I'm not absolutely certain. But could there be a hybrid situation? Or those situations where the Nevis Island administration can be sued? Is it mutually exclusive to the Nevis Island administration alone, and the federal government or the AG chamber would have no interference and no obligation to be a part of it? I really wish that that nebulous area could have been cleared up. Could have been cleared up. Could the federal government sue the Nevis Island administration? You have parents who sue their children, family members, sue family members. So could, you never know when falling out could come around, you know. When everything nice and dandy, everything nice and dandy. But when there is falling out, people would examine the most extreme of situations where they can bring about hurt, harm to the other party or agent that was once in a nice friendly relationship with them. And those are questions that are left unanswered. Now the question is, somebody indicated that there was an attempt or the action can be likened or parallel to constitutional reform. The government insisted that there was no constitutional reform. But somebody might ask, does it have to be wholesome on a broad scale for it to be considered constitutional reform? Or when it falls below that threshold, then you just refer to it as legislative adjustments. What is it really? You could have a sweeping reform that would be of a wider latitude, or you could have some changes be made. Because, of course, that adjustment that went from the fact that Nevis Island administration could not sue or could not be sued, they did not have that clarity in our Constitution. Now that that was provided for, could that be considered an adjustment, a slight adjustment, a very, very little adjustment in the Constitution? And could reform be considered, regardless of how minute the change is or was? Is a question left to be answered. Reform would suggest something of a wider magnitude. But that doesn't say that small changes cannot take place. And if small changes do take place, can the language of constitution reform, regardless of the degree to which it was done, be appropriate? Some persons would say no. If I have a team, an 11-member team representing St. Kitts Nevis, and the team would have been going on for quite a while, composition of more senior persons and junior, and then eventually you took out one of the seniors and had him replaced by a much younger person, so to speak. That was a change, that was an adjustment. The composition of seniors to juniors would have changed. It shifted, skewed a bit to the juniors. But at least you had a change. Now, if you decided that, look, those 5 remaining seniors that we have, we're going to discard them and have them totally replaced by younger people. Yes, you had a change as well. And yes, it was a 6-to-5 ratio, and now you're going to an absolute figure of 11-0. So would the second scenario be considered a reform or not? That was major. Get rid of all the seniors, back pushing you juniors. Or if you just replace one, that might not be considered a reform. What about if you replace 2 of the 5? What about if you replace 3 of the 5, then 4 of the 5, then all of the 5? Which one would be considered a reform? Yes, you have a reconstitution of the team. Which one? When you replace 1, is that sufficient to be a reform? If you replace 2, is that sufficient or is still an adjustment, a minor adjustment? Then if you replace 3, then you replace 4, then you replace all 5. And do you have to do them all at once? That's the question. Do you have to replace all 5 at once for it to be considered a reform? Let us suppose I did 1 every 2 months. So January, February, the end of February, we replace 1. March, April, we replace another 1. Is that still a mere adjustment? May, June, you replace another 1. Is that still an adjustment? July, August, you replace the next 1. That's 4 adjustments would have been made. But at no time, those adjustments were large. And then for September, October, you made a next adjustment. Now that would be 5 adjustments. But each one was seen as a minor adjustment. By the time October comes and you'd have made a complete adjustment, you cannot make any more adjustments because you are now happy with what output you now have because that is what you wanted. No more adjustments necessary. It is just perfectly ideal at this juncture that you have all youngsters playing and the older folks were discarded. Did so incrementally. You did not get all of them. You didn't get rid of all of them at one blow. So the issue is, at what juncture of those incremental changes, what is the threshold to define constitution reform? Now somebody might just, I'm not saying that the scenario that I put forward could not just be in one area alone. It could be several areas, but I just liken it to a team with a composition of 6 junior and 5 senior. Regardless of what happened with each one, I guess constitutional reform would come, but has it started? And that is the question. How much must be done to consider incremental changes a reform? Because you can do things bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit by bit. And then eventually there is nothing else to change because it is now perfectly ideal. So even though it did not happen in bulk of 2s, or 2 major bulks, What is the threshold? Or is it the way it is done? Constitution reform may involve wider consultation, broad-based consultation. But even though you might be doing constitutional reform, certain things are so straightforward that there might not even be need for consultation. Or comparatively, the extent of the consultation could be negligible. But yet, the changes you made, the gray areas would have now been placed into distinct shades of black and white. It's a little more technical, and I would have preferred to hear a little bit more debate. Yes, a broad statement, a general statement that constitutional reform would require consultation. We have to admit that even in the scheme of things where you actually declared and carrying out constitution reform, there are still some areas that might not necessarily lend themselves to consultation. Yet there might be some that would need consultation. There might be some that would need much more consultation. There might be others where the consultation seems as if it might not be ending. You like an asymptote. You get that close, but never would reach that connectivity or the object that you're getting close to. There is room for debate, and when that was done, suppose I take several more pieces and have them done like that until ideally there is no more, because like I said, at that juncture, it is perfectly, the output, the product was perfectly ideal. Yeah, those are issues that questions can be asked about. Some would say constitutional reform, others would say just an adjustment in legislation to fix something. So we fix and we fix and we fix and we fix. The constitutional reform is the same concept of fixing, but maybe the reform is fixing on a larger scale. Fixing on a larger scale. Let us take a break and come back.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newish Natal on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear Nor Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newish Natal every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newish Natal tackles the issues and take your calls. Fear Nor Favor every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Welcome back to Fear Nor Favor. I still believe that if St. Kitts and Nevis were to go their separate ways, things can be better from a socio-political perspective. All that might be needed is bilateral agreement, arrangement between the two islands, and maybe prioritizing as well opportunities to be granted by nationals of both islands in preference to non-nationals of St. Kitts and non-nationals of Nevis. I still feel that should be an open conversation. I know at times people might feel that it might not be that easy. There were many who saying that they couldn't become independent as well, and we hitting 40 now. There were many who thought that Anguilla could not go on its own, leave the statehood, and I don't really see why a political union at this stage in our development, both islands, is necessary for socioeconomic advantages to be had. Yes, there are persons, international conventions that our federation may have exceeded and ratified to, and they might not be willing to have an already small unit split anymore. But if it is the will of the people, it is the will of the people. There is still a great degree of bitterness, and we got to face it. There's still a great degree of bitterness amongst Kittitians and Nevisians. And I think that politics is mainly responsible for that unpalatable bitterness. I'm just convinced within my mind that a republic of Nevis and a republic of St. Kitts might just improve relationships and dilute the bitterness that on average really exists, truly exists amongst Kittitians and Nevisians. It might be convenient for some persons to want it to stay that way. Some persons might work out it is too complicated to resolve into two separate units. Some persons might decide that it is a risk that is worth taking. A lot of us, a lot of families, they have ties to people in Antigua. We don't have a federation of St. Kitts and Antigua. How many of us have ties in Santo Domingo? How many of us have ties, and many ties, in the U.S. Virgin Islands? There is no federation, Twin Island Federation existing, or even the thought of having St. Thomas and St. Kitts or St. Thomas and Nevis and forming Twin Island Federations. We can get along, and I'm convinced that we can get along better. Much, much better. You know, sometimes, to be honest, things done for the benefit of St. Kitts and Nevis, sometimes Nevis is an afterthought. And we must admit that. Even sometimes when persons are speaking of, and you have persons in authority too, sometimes they say St. Kitts and something nudged them and say Nevis as well. So you have St. Kitts, then a little pond, and then Nevis. Sometimes you have St. Kitts being said, then you have an ocean, and then Nevis is being said. Sometimes you have St. Kitts being said alone. And sometimes you have people saying St. Kitts and Nevis, but just from a mechanical perspective, it is not genuinely felt. And I think all this hypocrisy and idiosyncrasy and relationship of convenience, these things are to come to an end. Let people be more genuine. Let people be more genuine. What's that wrong a morning can be made right at night. We have to be seriously realistic. This thing started long time ago in Bachelor time. Long time ago. And it doesn't seem as if it might have been diluted to a certain extent, but not anything substantial. And that is why even when the authorities, yes, people have families on both islands, even when the authorities meet up to discuss improvement in relationship, it seems so mechanical. So mechanical. I don't believe their eyes do make four. Each one of them would come out a meeting knowing exactly what brand of shoe each one was wearing, whether or not they were polished, whether or not the strings were laced in a particular style, because I believe they spend more time looking down at each other's feet rather than letting their eyes make four. It is not something natural for Kittitians and Nevisians to be in conversations and their eyes making four, especially at the highest level or at the higher level. Some are genuine, and even the genuine nature can be perceived differently because of the history. You could be putting out your best. Dr. Joe might be putting out his best and really genuinely would like betterment, ameliorating of conditions. But that history would always be present. Children in primary school could tell you about it, up to secondary school, on the jobs. If we got along and the conditions and the feelings were improved upon throughout the years, how come we have Antigua and Barbuda cricket team coming up against Montserrat, Anguilla, St. Kitts, Nevis? Why we don't have a St. Kitts Nevis cricket team? You know, it is just a matter of convenience, because if we have a St. Kitts Nevis cricket team, whether 10 people come from Nevis and 1 from St. Kitts, as a sign of strengthening the bond between us, it should not matter. And if you were to pick a football team and 2 players came from Nevis, and that's the way it's supposed to be, let it be. We can't be preaching togetherness from a political perspective and from a social perspective. The practicality has such great differential. I can recall going to Antigua to compete in Leeward Island track and field meet. I represented St. Kitts. And Nevis competing against us. Antigua competed against us. Montshot competed against us, Anguilla. And I can recall a 4x4. The individuals were actually running around the track, encouraging the Antiguans to trample us in the 4x4 and the 4x1. But yet, we are standing under the same flag. We stood under the same flag. I don't know what can be more confusing than that. If we can do it in a wholesome fashion, and I don't think that would ever be, I think it's high time people start campaigning for a Republic of Nevis and a Republic of St. Kitts. Regardless of what it would take to iron out whatever, who got money in Social Security and how much, who got other investment in federal asset, what fraction of federal assets would go to Nevis, what fraction would go to St. Kitts. Some legal advice would be contributing to the overall effort. But regardless of how much time it would take, it would come to an end. You can't continue if you don't start. And just like how the man from out of England, wherever he's from, so he conducted a poll, and the response from St. Kitts and Nevis people was that they wanted to remain under the umbrella of King Chad III. They wanted to remain under the umbrella. Now, if we were to conduct polls to ask Nevisians in particular whether they wanted to remain within the Federation, as part of the Federation, I think a lot of them overwhelmingly would say no. From a political perspective, and from political convenience, you might have a good amount of them saying yes. But if they have confidence in their leader, who could actually generate revenue and jobs and have a good, healthy environment, a lot of foreign investment, 15,000 persons, and they find that they can make it without any attachment to St. Kitts, 90% of them would say they prefer Ifriga. That is my opinion. Nobody can tell me I cannot talk for Nevisians, because I think in that ratio I'm 60-40. Most of my family from Nevis. So I have a right to make an input. And I just think that is the way, that is a very viable way to go. And just operate from bilateral agreements or arrangements. Which is on the verge of maybe being geothermal rich. They have movies being produced. They have things that can go their way. But is the will of the people. Maybe it's time for them to have another referendum and see where it goes and go into a republic. And likewise, leaving St. Kitts behind to go into a republic. Something has to be done. It must not always be based on how elections turn out. That the value of Nevis is heightened or spiked. Must not always be like that. That is using innocent voters. The turnout for federal elections will be so low compared to the Nevis Island administration elections. And that gives an indication that a lot of persons not really interested in a federation politics. They're concerned about the politics within the localities. I guess that thought would come up again because you see what happened in the House today. Fighting to patch a hole in the legislation. To give Nevisians more latitude with respect to civil matters. Somebody might ask the question, is that a good thing? Or is it not so good? Because yes, you get the freedom to sue people and be sued. And all liability thereafter belong to you. Whatever you pull in, if you win the case, belong to you. So are you really in a better position? Some divisions might decide, look, they could have left that how it was. We ain't got the legal footing to sue anybody, and nobody can sue us. Everything got to come to the federal government. So one way or the other, no money coming out of the NIA purse. One way or the other, win or lose, no money coming out the NIA purse. The only place money would be coming from in the event that liability would have to be met from a financial perspective is the federal purse. It's a little deeper than a lot of people may think. I don't know if the passing of the bill would have put Nevis in a better position financially, looking ahead, or it might have worsened their position. Because if you could get money paid on your behalf, on your behalf by the federal government, we want to take it out of your own pocket. And again, if there's a pending case, I think the Attorney General office is better constituted to assist in civil matters if it is done on a federal basis. But when it is done just for the sake of the NIA or from the perspective of the NIA, would the Attorney General office make an input in the preparation? You know, come out and give us a little bit more meat on the bone. Or would they be leaving it entirely up to the legal department in the NIA? But there's strength in unity. And if all the legal minds, the great legal minds in the NIA, and the great legal minds in the federal Attorney General, federal legal department, then you could imagine what the output would be. But would there be restrictions as to the interference or the indulgence of the Attorney General's office in matters concerning, civil matters concerning the NIA? Those are questions that could be answered. I mean, any lawyer operating anywhere could call a senior or somebody who a little bit more adept than them at a particular topic. You could always call and ask for advice. They could hire or contract a legal mind to assist them in doing things. But with that would come an expense. Which purse would that expense be settled from? Let us take a break and be back.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newish Natal on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear Nor Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newish Natal every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newish Natal tackles the issues and take your call. Fear Nor Favor every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM. Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newish Natal on Sugar Soda 90.3 for Fear Nor Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? No runner come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Newish Natal every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Newish Natal tackles the issues and take your call. Fear Nor Favor every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Good evening again. Welcome back to Fear Nor Favor. And we want to examine the topic conflict resolution, alternative dispute resolution. We've been having quite a lot happening in our schools, and we have to start wondering what can be done to improve the school environs with respect to these fights and arguments and quarrel in order to positively impact the minds of our students. It is not easy. It has been going on for a while. And some school authorities will have to bear some of the blame. Because for years, they have been trying to save the face of the school in the eyes of the general public. Let us not do anything that would give the school a bad name. So anything that happens that would adversely impact the image of the school, let us put it up in the freezer and throw away the key. Just keep on the current. You know, many school authorities are guilty of that sort of protectionist behavior. And then it would spiral out of control. They don't want the public to know about it. They don't even get the police involved at times when they ought to. Sometimes they don't even let the education department be aware of what's going on. All in the name of saving the face of the education institution of which they are a part. Years upon years, this is happening. And technically, in a very tacit way, you're giving the students, or you gave them, licenses to misbehave and to be antisocial and at times to be criminal in nature. And some of us are quite aware of some students who are repeatedly creating problems for people. They harass them, they provoke them. Sometimes it seems as if the school compound and the authorities want to normalize that type of behavior. You got to make reports, and they are not taken seriously. And sometimes the persons who are misbehaving might be friendly with the authorities, so they don't want to take the necessary action. And then at the end of the day, when somebody, somewhere along the journey, somebody might have been provoked overwhelmingly, somebody might have been harassed, attacked, and they reach a point of boiling over, and they might have to retaliate. Then is when it might be seen fit to take drastic action. But what about those incremental steps of provocation? Because by law they can add up. And then, when somebody might have to retaliate out of pure provocation, and maybe sometimes it's self-defense, is all kind of calculations would have to come into practice. Did she apply 1.5 pounds worth of force when it ought to be 1.25 pounds of force. They put 8 ounces of force when maybe 7.5 ounces could have done the same job. Apparently, it is time for us to customize some sort of force calculation, some kind of app that if somebody slaps you, you work out what degree of force must I apply in retaliating. Somebody kicks you, what degree of force do I apply? There is no such apparatus or equipment or instrument. And most of the time, some persons would respond spontaneously. We have quite a bit going on amongst our youngsters. And there is the urgency of now in addressing these things before they continue to spiral out of control. There are a lot of conflicts occurring amongst our school children. Some of them start over social media. Every school child has a top grade phone that will allow them with apps and those stuff to allow them to do many things. We need to do better. There's information the Surgeon General indicated that social media is impacting the lives of many of our young people. The good gentleman, the good doctor had an interview with a CNN worker, and the sort of facts and stats that were revealed, we can do better than that. And he's appealing for us to do better than that. Say on average, young people spend at least 3 hours on social media on a daily basis. And remember the 3 hours, either 3 or 3.5, but let us give them the benefit of the doubt. 3 hours on social media. And that is average, eh? You could have some who spending 12. On the other extreme, you could have some who spending just 1 hour, 2 hours. But at the end of the day, when you sum up the hours spent by these children, an average of either 3 or 3.5 per day, every day, every single day. And the funny thing about it, and what some people have to understand, is that when you don't subject yourself to be showered with information from the internet, social media, when you come off your device, whether telephone or a computer, you still have to spend another 1.5 to 2 hours turning over in your mind, internalizing what you would have gathered via social media. Lord, and if it is gossip, you have to embellish it So you have to work out how best can I put over this story that I sound like the master of Jama or the mistress of Jama. How best could I embellish? Somebody tells you two things and you're going to put out four. The exponential growth in additionality when it comes to gossip and Jama is alarming. Each person along that chain tries to be most impressive than the previous one. Sometime at the end of the journey, there's a story that was never told, never intended to be told. But that is the nature of social media. And the Surgeon General is warning about it. He's very concerned about the health of young people and the hours they spend on the social media. Apart from the radiation that is hitting their eyes, that is penetrating their skulls and interfering with the brain cells, that is just one aspect of it. When a brain is sleep deprived, or let me say when a body is sleep deprived, it interferes with the body clock. Lack of sleep would interfere with the brain that you have. Some children come off the social media after 4 in the morning. Got to get up for 6 o'clock to get ready for school, 7 o'clock to get ready for school. A deprived brain gets damaged on a regular basis. No wonder some of them start to drop back with their schoolwork. They're not getting sufficient sleep. They're not getting sufficient sleep. So we have a society of sleep-deprived people. And touching on that, that was a topic that I really intended to do for my doctoral studies. What can sleep deprivation do to an individual's brain? My target was persons who work on shifts, nurses, police officers, security officers, people who work by industries working on shift. Let us suppose a nurse working on the morning shift 7 to 2 for quite a period of time. And then she gets the weekend off and then gone to work from 2 to 10. And then get some kind of time off after a duration of time again. Gone to work from 10 to 7. The body is being disrupted. And that is why I don't know, it might be better to have persons work a complete shift for several months and then have an extended period before you change that shift. But working one shift 1 month, then change it the next month, then change it the next month. There must be a minimum time frame that a person should be working on a particular shift. And there must be ample time in between shift change so that the body can readjust to the new shift that the person's supposed to be working. Remember, it's just not the shift alone. The person has a life. If you're going to work from 10 in the night to 7 in the morning, you normally will go sleep. Before that, you might have been able to go to sleep 9 o'clock, wake up 6 o'clock. Now you're going out on duty at a time when recently, you've been sleeping at that time. The possibility exists that you might drop sleep once or twice. There are certain lighting conditions that they would have to use to ensure that you do not fall asleep. And let us suppose that that person is a nurse and you fell asleep. And yes, the possibility exists that two nurses could fall asleep too. Sometimes a particular institution might be short-staffed with respect to nurses. And you're supposed to give somebody medication, wake up somebody for medication at a particular time. But you fell asleep. And maybe got up when you're supposed to give them the medication the second time around. So within that time frame, the dosage that was intended to help to cure, ease, or provide comfort for that patient would have been reduced considerably. Because let us suppose it's a medication, 500 milligrams, and there's a reason why it was up by 500 milligrams. And you miss the second one after giving the first. I mean, when the person ought to have gotten 1,500 milligrams, they got only 10. There's a reason why the attending doctor decided that you had to give 500 milligrams 4 times in a prescribed period of time. The person didn't deliberately fall asleep, but it can happen. Some people now have resorted to using chemical consumption to keep them up. Maybe even coffee. And then for this reason, and maybe this reason only, they had to continuously use coffee. And then they might become a coffee addict. So those parents who have children operating their devices at nights, children ain't working anyway, they're working any shift. So you could better manage them. The Surgeon General was advising that you take the devices away from the children at least an hour before bedtime. Take them away. When they get up in the morning to start the day afresh, then you could give them back. What happened in Guyana recently? You have an institution with some children. They're a reasonable range in age. The person who was looking after them took away the phone from this individual, this young lady, because the conversations she was involved in with an elderly male, the authority felt that it was unacceptable, and they took away the device from her. And she indicated to them that she's going to burn down the place if they didn't give her back her device she was going to burn down the place, burn it down. And that is precisely what she did. And lives were lost. About 19 lives were lost. And you know what is strange about that? When persons came to the rescue, she was the first person to be rescued, you know. The first person to be rescued. After setting the place on fire, killing 19 people. That is so sad, man. So sad. All because her device was taken away from her because she was involved in communication that was deemed unhealthy. You see what could happen when we allow our children to spiral out of control and enter into the realms of addiction. That some people would kill. Somebody might have forgotten the phone somewhere in town and they live Sandy Point. Buses stop run, no Uber service, no taxi. You have persons who would leave Sandy Point and run, go back to town to see if they could get their phone. Some persons cannot do without the phone for an entire night. As a matter of fact, some persons would have 2 and 3 phones. The addiction is so strong that they just simply cannot do without that usage. We have to start better monitoring our children. A lot of conflicts that take place at our schools started over the internet. Somebody always want to tell somebody said this about them and that about them. And what they're going to do to them. I can recall listening a conversation and was told something similar. You had a common denominator of persons who would go to Mr. A, and this happened at CFBC, you know, would go to Mr. A and tell him that B said this and said that. And then go back to B and say A said this and said that. And it so happened that I knew both A and B. I picked them up in my vehicle and took a drive over to Frigate Bay, and we had a discussion on the way. And I didn't let one jump in behind and one jump in front. The two of them jump in behind. And when the story was actually told, not a thing went so. B did not send anybody to tell A anything and vice versa. That intervention was timely. Sometimes you see when people have conflicts, dealing with one at a time on different occasions, sometimes it just doesn't work like that. You have to bring them together. We have to bring them together and let them say what they have to say. If they have to vent, they have to vent. Then after venting and understanding the root cause of whatever, you bring about some reconciliation. And interestingly, when we were coming back in, because I wanted to drop them back to CFBC, one of them belt was just not operational. And he only had about half the money to buy a new belt in Rams. And it is the next one who gave him the other half to buy the belt. And persons were shocked when they reached back to the college and saw the two of them in the library doing work together. And that continued for a very long time. Sometimes you need effective intervention. Stop taking them up one by one. You'll never get a true story. Never, ever. And it's not any and anybody can intervene in conflict. You have to be trained to do it. If there's a choice, you want somebody trained to do it. If you cannot find that person, then you do the best you can until situations would permit you to get somebody who is more effective or proficient at conflict resolution than you are. And if you're trying to resolve an issue and it is simply beyond you, get help. You, the person who is trying to intervene, must get help. You must not just throw up your hands and decide you're done with it. This is like a relay. You would have gathered information, but you would have reached your limit. You get somebody, you pass that baton over to them, and they would continue. And likewise, if it is a little bit beyond them, they pass it on. Somewhere along that journey, things would improve sufficiently well. But there's an urgent need for conflict resolution at our schools. No child in any house should have password for the device. All parents should be having free access to the content on the children's devices. Unless you'll be shocked. You would be shocked. One time you might just sneak up on them and take up the phone and already open it. Take the phone and lock down in your bedroom and go through it. Now, that is if they don't take a sledgehammer and break down your door, because they can't afford for you to see the content. And some of them will do that. Some of them will do that. Go for a big stone, a hammer, whatever it takes. You'll be surprised to see how fast the door opens. And if that is the case, you have to wonder, well, why? What do they have to hide? But they have a lot to hide. I think that a good step for parents is to develop trust. If you develop trust between you and your children, regardless of what happened, nothing could be too embarrassing for them to come and disclose to you, reveal things to you. But you too would have to learn how to respond when you get the information. It might not be the most favorable information you would like to have of your children. And sometimes when you talk to these children, even if you get them in group discussions, they're telling you playing out that is why he didn't want to tell her anything, you know. That is how she should behave. So even you would have to learn to respond in a conducive way when you get to learn of information for the first time in the presence of your child. Coping skills. certain information going to be disclosed. Once a child is under the roofing of the parents, no guidance counselor or therapist should make it the first order of business not to inform the parents. But the problem is sometimes you got to be so careful. Some people like to say, tell me, man, it's going to be okay. Tell me it's okay. I going to know how to deal with it. And you're talking to them, you tell them they take out the shoe heel, hit the child across the face. This is the same person who tell you they know how to deal with it. In the US, they have laws indicating that if someone tells you something in therapy and they ask of you not to let anybody else know, you got to respect that law, regardless of what it is. Whether the person had a mental breakdown and is currently taking medication, they disclose that to you. Or whether they came to see you as a psychologist and based on your findings, you would have referred them to a psychiatrist so that they can get pharmacological treatment as opposed to the talk therapy that you were affording them. Sometimes you form a combination. Pharmacological treatment and psychological treatment. The preferred one is psychological because sometimes medication could have side effects. And at sometimes the side effect, one of the side effects could well be violence, exhibiting violence. We have to build a rehabilitation center. A rehabilitation center doesn't mean that it's for people who would have lost their minds, persons who would have become addicted to alcohol. It could simply be a situation where someone could have invested time, money, energy into an association, a relationship, a bond, and somehow the dividend that was expected did not materialize. And then that person might want an environment and staff that will go a long way in helping them through that particular moment. Sometimes all you need to do is help them through a particular moment, you know. Sometimes it might be extended from a moment to a period of time. And once that person gets over that, they'll be good to go thereafter. They don't need any medication. They just needed to get over that moment or period of time. But everybody is not strong alike. Everybody is not strong alike. And research would have shown that family therapy is very powerful. But we have a kind of culture here that as long as family members realize that something is happening to you, they start to dissociate themselves. So that well-recommended family therapy would never be afforded to you because families are not coming forward. And that is why some of us would have to make friends. There are times when water is thicker than blood. Reach the lines. Sometimes you have to bring friends into the program. Sometimes as a therapist, you're trying to collect collateral information from persons close to a particular individual. And not one blood family could come and say anything. The collateral information came from friends, 2 or 3 close friends. No family member that close. Because we abandoned the person. That alone can be so catastrophic for a person who is going through something at a particular juncture and became void of the family support. You might remember, even though family support is good, you might realize that despite trying to embrace the individual, it is a little bit beyond you. Don't let pride kill you. Seek help from professionals. Seek help because you're trying to provide that family therapy, embracing something might, a necessary ingredient might be lacking. So you could approach the expert. The expert would not discard you, but you can have group therapy. The same way you're doing it and it went beyond you, all of you can now come before the expert and get something better than what was happening previously. And I think the time has come for us to not only develop a rehabilitation center, but also to get more psychologists around. Sometimes we are too quick to put people on medication. And sometimes we have them on medication for years, but never refer them to a therapist to get some talk therapy. Medication, and you're just stuck in this medication mode. That can't always be the answer. Maybe we have a shortage of persons who can offer talk therapy. Because sometimes when you try to make an appointment, you're in dire distress. And they're telling you you can check them 10 months later. That's the earliest appointment you have. Well, 10 months later, not even you might be able to recognize yourself. There is a shortage, and maybe the government could carry out a project and decide, well, within the next 4 or 5 years, we should have about 20. We should have about 20 clinical psychologists around, or psychologists. About 20. Must have a time frame. Because at the rate we are going, quite a lot is happening to young people. If we don't get a hold on that, because when they get in that state, usually they don't be productive as they ought to have been. Sometimes the work you get them involved in is just to keep them occupied, get their mind having on something different, but not really doing anything to get substantial pay. No contribution to Social Security. So you know who making contributions to look after those who came before you. Your situation would be void, terribly void or impacted, because those behind are supposed to be making contributions to look after you. Things will be drying up. So the onus is on everybody. Everybody. To try and help out. Because you might say, but I'm a business, I hear any people in business. Yes, you're being deliberate in your analysis and work out that he's somebody else's problem. And then some 100 other people say the same thing about 100 other young persons. And then another 100 say about another 100 young persons. So that's 201. But if these 201 people end up in a state of mind where they cannot contribute to the gross domestic product and obviously by extension to Social Security, when time for your benefits, what are you going to get? They might have to carry up the Social Security benefit age to 75. And you got to understand that. At 62, some people making that because they hear they want to carry it up to 64. But if you continue to disregard the health of persons who are troubled because it is not direct concern of yours, well, you would learn indirectly. You would learn indirectly that when your wife is pregnant, maternity benefits, old age benefit, all kind of benefits, you'll be surprised that nothing there to pay them because of the stance you took several years back. We got to start seeing the bigger picture. We got to start going oil deep. We have been too superficial for too long. We got to see way beneath the surface. Way, way, way beneath the surface. Forward thinking. Unless we are going to get the bitter part. The bitter part. All you got to do is embrace and try to help. Unless when you should have been retired and getting something of substance, you'll be busy filling out application forms for jobs. You might even have to go on those jobs in a wheelchair if you don't take heed. Let us take a break and come back.
Fellow citizens, near and far, join Newish Natal on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear No Favor.
Where is man? Where is the cancer man? Don't run come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Nourish Natal every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Nourish Natal tackles the issues and take your calls. Fear nor favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM. Fellow citizens, near and far, join Nourish Natal on Sugar City 90.3 for Fear Nor Favor.
Where is one? Where is the cancer? Pandora come out for war.
Tune in to 90.3 on your FM dial. Log on to SugarCityFMSankits.com or download Simple Radio app from the Google Play Store. And join Nourish Natal every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. as Nourish Natal tackles the issues and take your calls. Fear nor favor. Every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. on Sugar City 90.3 FM.
Welcome back to Fear Nor Favor. I know a lot of graduations line up to take place between now and July. And some of them are expensive. It is quite an investment for some parents. What I don't understand, though, especially for the secondary schools, what is the significance of graduation? Graduation, to me, would indicate that you would have achieved a particular level of achievement academically. And then there's a ceremony for prizes and appreciation and for parents to feel proud. Some parents have to take loans so that the children can partake in the various events. And don't talk about the prom. Somehow I don't believe too much in that, because you're spending thousands of dollars. Put your son or daughter as the most elegantly dressed individual, the best hairdo, the best shoes. And then results come back, and that person ain't even pass one subject. I don't know if we're doing it a bit wrong. Is the graduation just to say you reach a particular age and you leave in school? Why all the pomp and circumstance involving graduation without the results being there? It is not adding up for me. To say you had a graduation ceremony, okay, give them a school leaving certificate. You have some people who don't graduate 3 times from secondary school. First time they didn't pass any subject. The next time they pass 1 or 2. Then they have to repeat it a third time in order to accumulate the 4 that they may need to go on to CFBC or to apply for a job. And I question how much sense that would really make. Let the results come back. Put your graduation ceremonies after the results would have come back. They would have stronger feelings knowing that you're investing your money in somebody who did not waste your investment of time, energy, and scarce money. What is the graduation ceremony all about? Somebody gone to school, they got 1A6, 2A6, 3A6, 4A6, 5A6, and the best dress. Voted the best dressed male at the prom. Person didn't even get a chance to do one CXC subject. Tell me how the spending of money on this graduation ceremony and the events could be justified. 1A6, 2A6, 3A6, 4A6, 5A6, no exam at CXC, but that person is graduating. Graduating from where to where? There has been no graduation because you did not move on from one level to a next level. 1A6, 2, 3, 4, 5A6. Where was the graduation? There was none. But we put everything on a blanket and call it graduation ceremony. And maybe that is why some students go to school and create problems. Because we have to admit, got a lot of teachers ain't going on in those classes. If you were to put a drone or some way of taking information of teachers who go to the A6 them, the register would have been a lot of wedding. But because these people know eventually they would graduate, get a gown, they continue to go with a view towards going to the prom. But I, for one, I don't even like graduations. I really don't like graduations. To me, they're boring. And for me to go to a child's graduation with no achievement, that's a recipe for a bad feeling for a very, very long time. What message are you sending? That you could just go to school and waste all those years and then you're going to be a major part of a prom, experiencing all the pomp and circumstances. You want to tell me you go to school, kindergarten, well, I don't even count in preschool. Kindergarten to grade 6. That's 7 years of primary school. 7 years of primary school. And then 5 years, that's if you don't repeat, 5 years of secondary school. So you want to tell me that 12 years of schooling, 12 years of sacrifices, energy, time, money, and you just finish school with nothing, and you are being embraced? Can be. If you are challenged from an academic perspective, find an institution that will pay dividend by way of a skill development. Not everybody academically inclined, but they can well develop a good skill set and move forward. 12 years at school and nothing? Man, that's not supposed to be, man. Some people have it real difficult and had to sacrifice their opportunities to reasonably succeed academically. But even that sacrifice ought not to bring you to zero. Let us put it on the extreme. Let us say, well, okay, it did. Those might just be outliers. Those might be outliers. You cannot justify a child going to school with a book in his pocket, and after the first 6 weeks of schooling, where the mark sheet supposed to be produced, nothing on the mark sheet, nothing in the book. A matter of fact, the one exercise book roll up lasts an entire school year with just a name on the cover. Tell me the justification of putting on a pair of shoes that cost $700 or $800 on that child's feet. Man, that is so idiosyncratic. What are you trying to prove? Take some of the money. Buy books that could help. Send the child to extra classes. And just somebody in an $800 pair of shoe. And there is nothing to show for it. Man, I believe we got things inside out, man. Everybody might not be able to achieve at the same level. But you got to structure your home. Even if you did not get a chance, it make it even more important for you to ensure that your children get something out of school. You went for 12 years and get nothing, and your children 12 years and nothing? No, man. That can't be right. In no family structure that could be right unless you have extreme mental challenges. Don't tell me this is like a discipline. And what is also bothersome for me, is when a child is in primary school and have homework to do. The child might be in grade 2. Let us put the child in grade 2. And you want to tell me that that child would have outgrown the help he could get from his parents' home? Well, you were not ready. You were not ready to get any child. Because you got to do your forecast. Know what capacity you have to help your child. how in this day and age a child could outgrow the help he can get from the home where the parent or parents are. How? Pride and ambition. Grade 2, grade 3. Can't help your child put a sentence together. Grade 4, grade 5. Can't help them solve a math problem. And we got to get more pride and ambition than that. Way back then, when people had to sacrifice school and go into the cane field and the estate, to ask them to help with a whole different school curriculum, different syllabus content, I could understand the challenges. But mothers are much younger than before. Some people, by the time they reach 34, they're done grandmother. And you're going to tell me at that young age, your child in primary school, grade 2, grade 3, would have outgrown the help that they could get from you? Man, we got to come better than that, man. Way, way, way better than that. Grandmothers are younger. So when they were in school, when this particular syllabus content was being delivered, you might have had a little tweak here and a little tweak there. But the nucleus of this modern syllabus would have been delivered with a high percentage of those mothers in school. And you're going to tell me that your child would have outgrown the help it could get with his schoolwork inside of your house? That should have been a crime. That should have been a crime. Some of them want to get children and still behave as if they do not have children. No change. A culture has consumed us in the worst of way. Maybe it's time for, and I was thinking about it, maybe at my institution I should invite a parent and a child. A parent and a child. Come with your child. Even if it is to do primary school work. Take out your compass and your ruler and a pencil. Construct a 90-degree angle, a 45-degree angle, a 60-degree angle, a 120, a 30, a 15-degree angle. Learn how to use the compass. Learn your tables. Some of us would have completed school and do not know what tables. People meet us in town. 9 times 9. Some of them tell you 99. Now, it's just ridiculous. 12 years in school. And you're telling people 9 times 9 is 99. No pride, no ambition. Things can be so hard that you can't learn. And the less you have from a materialistic perspective, the more you should be pushed to learn. Some of us just ridiculous. You and your children and father gone separate ways. You spend more time creating drama between your children and father and your lover. If you only put 1/10 of that energy into assisting those same children with their schoolwork, that smile on your face would have been brighter. We just put our focus the wrong places. The wrong places. He gone on with his life, you gone on with yours. And you still want to meet his people and curse them. Jammer, 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 jammer. And then when you're chewing them under pressure with the schoolwork, and you're going around the table to help them, you're telling them 9 times 9 is 99. And how? Academics say no, you could develop skills. You could make money. And some of them too lazy. They want money the quick way. So they even risk their freedom by getting involved in the pushing of drugs. That's supposed to be a shortcut. That's supposed to be a shortcut. So then the kids don't only lose their fathers, but there's also a real probability of losing the mothers as well. Supposed to eliminate that. Do a risk assessment and see what would happen as a result of you taking that risk. And at the nucleus of your consideration is where would these children be left? If you can go through those contemplation, you might as well familiarize yourself with exorcism, communication with the dead, and see which one you can exchange your life for. We have come to the end of this program for tonight. And it was a little bit on the bittersweet side, because there are some realities that we need to really look at. Some people are in a partying mode every weekend. Yes, the DJs and those who do entertainment would have to make their penny. But what happens if they make it without you this week? Some of us just going, partying, recreating ourselves. And our houses are nothing more than a house. We need to convert some of them houses into homes. Spend less time on the road. Stay in your house, structure it, give it texture, and convert your house into homes. I must commend the government, previous governments, and those before, for bringing about the housing revolution. But my message to the authorities is that we need a revolution of homes. We need the homes revolution. A mere housing revolution would not suffice. It is only the start. Things must be put in place to allow that wooden or concrete structure to have texture and to have quality amongst the occupants of those houses. And that is when they'll be translated or conveyed into homes. We need more homes, less houses. Good night.
The opinions and statements made by the host and participants in this program are not